in the heart of the crystalline citadel of Zarvale, where spires of living quartz pulsed with ancient starlight and the air hummed with the quiet energy of 1,000 generations of royal bloodlines. A peculiar tension crackled like static before a storm. The throne room, vast, echoing, and draped in veils of iridescent silk, was usually a place of measured decorum, but today it buzzed with something closer to chaos. At its center stood Jorin Vale, a human warrior of the Terran Expeditionary Corps, clad in battered but clean fatigues, his dark hair cropped short, his eyes tired yet alert. He had been summoned without explanation, escorted through corridors that shimmered like liquid emerald, past guards whose eyes glinted like polished obsidian beneath ornate helms. He didn't know why he was here, only that the Vrakhan Empire, the galactic power whose green-skinned, white-haired nobility ruled a cluster of desert worlds with grace and iron, had taken a sudden, inexplicable interest in him. Across from him lounged Princess Lysara Vrakhan, heir to the Sapphire Throne and commander of the Third Sunward Fleet. At 23 by Earth reckoning, though age among her people was measured in solar cycles and emotional maturity, Lysara was a vision of regal mischief. Her skin shimmered a soft jade, like moonlight on moss, and her long silken hair, the color of winter frost, tumbled past her shoulders in elegant waves. She wore ceremonial battle armor, silver and scaled like dragonhide, trimmed in royal blue. One arm rested on the arm of her floating chair, the other twirling a ceremonial dagger between her fingers. Her violet eyes sparkled with amusement as she watched Jorin shift uncomfortably under the weight of her gaze. "Oh, human," she drawled, her voice melodic but laced with teasing. "Still standing at attention like a soldier on parade? You're not in the sandpits of Kelnor anymore. This is my mother's palace. You can breathe, maybe even slouch. I won't tell." Jorin cleared his throat. "Your Highness, with all due respect, you've dragged me here without explanation, through half your palace, and now you're smiling like a cat that swallowed a canary." Lysara laughed, a sound like wind chimes dancing in a solar breeze. "Is that a Terran expression? Swallowed a canary? How delightfully odd. I do like your idioms. They're so fleshy." He frowned. "Fleshy? Yes, like you. All soft and pink and prone to blushing when I compliment your arms." She gestured lazily toward his biceps, which, by the way, are quite impressive. "I've seen your combat logs from the Kelnor campaign. You held the Eastern Ridge alone for 6 hours. Even my warlords were impressed." Jorin's cheeks flushed. "That was my squad. I just happened to be the last one standing." "Modest too," she cooed, kicking her feet up on a floating footrest woven from stardust vines. How utterly charming. This had become something of a routine over the past few weeks. Ever since Jorin and his unit had helped repel a surprise raid by the Void Reavers, a marauder faction that preyed on the Outer Rim, Lysara had taken to finding him during his recovery leave, poking fun at his blunt earth manners, challenging him to sparring matches he always lost, though she claimed he was getting less clumsy, and once, during a banquet, feeding him candied sky plums with her own fingers while the entire court watched in scandalized delight. He didn't know if she was flirting, testing him, or just bored, but he knew one thing. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Not that he'd ever admit it. "Why am I here, princess?" he asked, cutting through the banter. "You've been different lately." Lysara's smile faltered for just a heartbeat before she masked it with another grin. "Different how? More flirtatious? More annoying? More dangerously attractive? More like you're hiding something," he said bluntly. Before she could reply, the great doors at the far end of the throne room slid open with a whisper. A hush fell over the chamber. Even the floating orbs of ambient light dimmed in reverence. From the corridor strode Queen Vale Vrakhan, Empress of 7 Suns, Matron of the Silent Sands, and mother to the mischievous princess before him. The queen was taller than her daughter, her frame carved from centuries of command and cosmic wisdom. Her green skin was darker, like forest shadow, and her white hair was braided into intricate knots threaded with star metal. She wore robes that shimmered like a nebula in motion, and her eyes, older, deeper, and infinitely sadder than Lysara's, locked onto Jorin with unnerving intensity. Lysara snapped to her feet, her playful demeanor vanishing in an instant. "Mother!" Queen Vela nodded once, then swept past her daughter without a word, stopping a few paces from Jorin. For a long moment, she simply studied him. The way his jaw clenched, the way his hands flexed at his sides, the stubborn set of his shoulders. Then, without warning, she reached out and touched his temple with 3 slender fingers. A A jolt of warmth ran through him, accompanied by a brief vision. A desert under twin suns, a ship crashing in flames, a woman weeping over a child wrapped in cloth spun from comet tails. "You have his eyes," the queen murmured. Jorin recoiled slightly. "Whose eyes?" She turned to Lysara, her voice steady but heavy. "Lysara, my daughter, I have kept this secret long enough. The time has come." Lysara's expression tightened. "Mother, not now." "Now," the queen insisted. She turned back to Jorin. 30 solar cycles ago, during the War of Shattered Moons, a Terran scout vessel was shot down over the dunes of Rakes. Only one survived. A young man no older than you are now. He was wounded, alone, and hunted by our enemies. I found him, sheltered him, loved him. Jorin's mouth went dry. The pieces began to click, and dread pooled in his stomach like cold lead. "I bore his child," the queen continued, her voice barely above a whisper now. She gestured to Lysara. "And that child is your sister." Silence. Then not silence. The air itself seemed to stop moving. Lysara froze mid-step, her face draining of all expression. Her violet eyes, usually so full of fire and laughter, went wide and hollow. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The dagger she'd been playing with slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the vast chamber. Jorin felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. "Sister?" he choked out. The queen nodded slowly. "His name was Darien Vale. He chose to return to Earth once the war ended. He did not know I carried his child. I never told him. The customs of our people do not allow half-blood heirs to inherit the throne openly. So I raised her as purely Vrakan. But the blood is there, in her eyes, in her spirit." Lysara finally found her voice. But it was brittle, broken. You're telling me that this human, this man I've been teasing, is my brother?" "Half-brother," the queen corrected gently. "Yes." Jorin stared at Lysara, searching her face for any sign of recognition, for the family resemblance he'd never noticed before. The shape of her brow, the curve of her nose. It was subtle, but now that he knew, it was impossible to unsee. His mind reeled. All those moments, the flirting, the playful jabs, the lingering glances, had they been built on a foundation of something twisted, impossible? Lysara whirled on her mother, her voice rising in anguish. "Why now? Why tell us this now?" "Because the Void Reavers are returning," Queen Vela said gravely. "And they know. Someone in the court has spoken. They plan to use your mixed blood as a weapon, to claim you are unfit to rule, that the throne is vulnerable. I will not let them fracture our house from within. The truth must come from us, before it comes from them." Lysara turned to Jorin, her eyes searching his. There was hurt there, confusion, but also something else, fear. Fear of what this meant for everything she thought she knew about herself, and about him. I thought you were just another warrior," she whispered. "And I thought you were just a princess with too much time on her hands," he replied, his voice rough. A tense silence hung between them, thick with betrayal and revelation. Then, abruptly, Lysara let out a short, sharp laugh, hysterical, raw. "So all those times I called you fleshy, I was technically insulting myself." Jorin blinked. Then, against all odds, he chuckled. "Guess so." Queen Vela watched them, a flicker of relief in her ancient eyes. "The bond of blood is not a chain," she said softly. "It is a bridge. And right now, our empire needs both of you." As if on cue, the palace alarms began to wail. A deep, resonant tone that reverberated through the court's walls. Red light flooded the chamber. A royal guard burst through the doors, his armor scorched, his breath ragged. "Your Majesties, Void Reavers, they've breached the orbital defenses. They're heading for the Grand Spire." Lysara's face hardened. The princess was gone, replaced by the commander. She snatched up her dagger and strode toward the armory alcove, snapping orders over her shoulder. "Jorin, come with me. You know their tactics better than anyone." He didn't hesitate. Wouldn't miss it. They ran through the palace corridors, now alive with panic and purpose. Servants scrambled for shelter. Soldiers mobilized in gleaming lines. Lysara activated a panel that opened a hidden passageway behind a waterfall of liquid light. Inside, racks of weapons hummed with stored energy. She tossed Jorin a plasma rifle modified with Vrakan tech, a gift he'd once refused, saying human weapons are good enough. Now he accepted it without protest. You trust me with this? He asked. She met his eyes. You're my brother. Of course I do. The word still felt strange, alien, but not wrong. Not anymore. They emerged onto the skyward balcony just as the first enemy ships tore through the upper atmosphere. The Void Reaver's vessels were jagged, black things, shaped like claws trailing smoke and malice. Beams of dark energy lanced toward the palace, shattering towers and scorching the sky. Lysara leapt onto the railing, her armor shifting into combat mode, blades extending from her forearms. We hold this line, she shouted over the roar of destruction. If they take the spire, they take the Heartstone, and without it, our people will fall to chaos. Jorin took position beside her, scanning the horizon. How many? Enough to make this interesting, she said, with that familiar spark returning to her eyes. Think you can keep up, brother? He grinned, despite everything. Try not to show off too much, sister. The battle came fast and furious. Reaver drop pods slammed into the palace gardens, disgorging hulking, insectoid warriors with chitinous armor and bioplasma cannons. Jorin fired with precision, his earth-honed reflexes syncing perfectly with the alien tech in his hands. Lysara moved like a storm given form, spinning, slashing, her white hair whipping in the wind, green skin gleaming under fire. Together, they were unstoppable. At one point, a Reaver commander, a towering brute with glowing red eyes, cornered Lysara, knocking her dagger from her hand. Jorin didn't think. He lunged, tackling the creature with a roar. They crashed through a stained glass window depicting the founding of the Empire, rolling across the shattered floor. Jorin drove his elbow into the beast's throat, then fired point-blank into its chest. It shrieked and dissolved into black ash. He turned to find Lysara already back on her feet, breathing hard, a cut bleeding along her cheek. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did, he replied simply. Family doesn't let family fall. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Then let's finish this. They fought side by side through the burning halls, retaking the Grand Archive, the Astral Observatory, the Hall of Echoes. With every step, the strangeness of their bond faded, replaced by something deeper, trust forged in fire. When they finally reached the Heartstone Chamber, a circular room where a massive, pulsing crystal glowed with the soul of the Empire, they found the Reaver warlord waiting for them. He was unlike the others, tall, cloaked in shadow, his face hidden beneath a mask of bone. Half-breed, he hissed at Lysara. Unworthy heir. The throne belongs to the pure. Lysara stepped forward, defiant. My blood is Vrakan and Terran, and I am more worthy than you'll ever be. The warlord laughed, a wet, guttural sound, and raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Jorin fired first, his shot ricocheting off the Heartstone and striking the warlord's weapon arm. The weapon exploded in a burst of dark energy. Lysara didn't waste the opening. With a cry that echoed centuries of royal fury, she launched herself at the warlord, driving her dagger into his chest. He collapsed, his mask cracking open to reveal hollow eyes and a snarl of hatred. Silence returned. The Heartstone pulsed brighter, as if in approval. In the aftermath, as medics tended to the wounded and engineers began repairs, Jorin and Lysara stood together on the balcony once more, watching the twin suns sink below the desert horizon. The sky burned gold and violet. So, she said after a while. Brother. So, he echoed. She turned to him, her expression softer now. I'm sorry for all the teasing. I didn't know. I'm glad you did, he admitted. It kept me on my toes. And it made me see you as more than just a princess. She smiled, truly smiled. And I see you as more than just a soldier. They stood in comfortable silence for a time, the weight of their shared blood no longer a burden, but a bond. Below, the city of Zarvale began to rebuild, its people stronger for having faced the storm together. And though neither of them knew what the future held, whether peace would last, whether the court would accept their truth, whether new threats would rise from the void, one thing was certain. They would face it together, not as strangers, not as rivals, but as family. Days turned into weeks. Jorin was granted special status, not as a foreign soldier, but as a member of the royal house by blood. He trained with Lysara's elite guard, taught them Terran tactics, and in return, learned the ways of the Vrakan. Their relationship evolved not into romance, but into something rarer, a partnership of equals, bound by loyalty and shared purpose. One evening, as they sparred in the moonlit gardens, Lasara disarmed him with a flourish and stood over him, grinning. Still getting less clumsy, she teased. Jorin lay on the grass, catching his breath. Give a guy a break. You've had 300 years of practice. 312, she corrected. And don't forget it. He laughed, and she reached down to help him up. Their hands clasped, green and pink, alien and human, and for the first time it felt right. Far above, the stars twinkled, indifferent to the dramas of mortals. But on the desert world of Rakes, beneath the watchful gaze of ancient spires and twin suns, a new chapter had begun. Not of war, but of unity. And in the heart of the royal palace, two siblings, different in skin, same in spirit, stood ready to write it together. Weeks passed, and the uneasy peace that followed the Void Reaver assault began to settle like dust over the dunes. But dust, Jorin had learned, could hide scorpions. Though hailed as heroes, he and Lasara found themselves watched more closely than ever. Whispers slithered through the royal court like venomous snakes. Some nobles praised their victory. Others murmured that the princess's Terran taint had invited the attack in the first place. Jorin heard the rumors through coded glances and hushed conversations that stopped the moment he entered a room. He said nothing, but tension coiled in his shoulders like a spring. Lasara, ever the storm, refused to bow to sentiment. She doubled patrols, tightened security, and began a quiet purge of suspected Reaver sympathizers in the lower ranks of the court. Yet even she grew quieter in private. One night, Jorin found her in the royal archives, poring over a sealed data codex older than the Empire itself. Her white hair was loose, her armor replaced by a simple jade robe, and the circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights. You should rest, he said gently. She didn't look up. Rest is for those who believe the war is over. It's not. What are you looking for? She finally met his gaze, her violet eyes sharp with a new kind of fear. The Heartstone didn't just repel the Reavers during the assault. It reacted to you. Jorin frowned. Reacted how? When you fired near it, the energy didn't scatter. It focused, like it recognized your blood. She tapped the codex. According to this, the Heartstone only resonates with direct descendants of the first matriarch, or with those who carry the seed of the original Terran bond. Darien, Jorin whispered. Yes. She closed the codex. But there's more. The Reavers didn't just want the Heartstone, they wanted you. Specifically. Before he could ask why, a tremor shook the palace. Not from an explosion, but from deep below. The ground groaned like a waking beast. Alarms blared, but these were different. Low, mournful, reserved for internal catastrophes. The core wells? Lasara gasped, leaping to her feet. They're destabilizing. They raced through the labyrinthine underlevels of the palace, past chambers carved into the planet's living crust. The core wells were ancient geothermal vents that powered the Citadel's shields, lights, and life support. Sacred, sealed, and supposedly untouchable. Yet as they descended into the chamber of veins, they found chaos. Vents spewed superheated steam, and the obsidian floor cracked underfoot. At the center stood a figure in a tattered cloak, arms raised toward the largest well, chanting in a guttural tongue. It was Lord Kalen, a high counselor Jorin had seen at nearly every war council, a man with smooth green skin and eyes like dried blood. Kalen? Lasara's voice cracked with disbelief. You're a traitor? Kalen turned, his lips curling into a sneer. Traitor? No, princess. I am a purifier. For centuries, our bloodline has been diluted by outsiders. First the Terrans, now their mongrel heirs. The Heartstone weakens because of you. But if I awaken the sleeper beneath the wells, it will cleanse this palace, and this world, of all impure blood. The sleeper? Jorin asked. A bioweapon from the Age of Ash, Lasara whispered. Buried under the palace. A living storm of nanites that consumes everything not encoded with pure Vrakon DNA. Kalen laughed. And your human brother? He'll be the first to dissolve. Without warning, he slammed his palm onto a control rune. The central well erupted in a pillar of black smoke. From it rose a swirling cloud of metallic particles. Shimmering, shifting, hungry. Run! Jorin shouted, grabbing Lasara's arm. But Lasara pulled free. No. If it spreads beyond this chamber, it'll consume the entire city. She turned to Jorin, her eyes blazing. You have to go to the Heartstone. It's the only thing that can override the sleeper's command code. What about you? I'll hold it here. My blood might slow it down. Like hell you will, Jorin snapped. He yanked a resonance grenade from his belt, a gift from the royal armory, and tossed it into the cloud. The explosion sent a shockwave of harmonic energy rippling through the chamber, causing the nanites to stutter and curl inward. Kalen howled in rage and lunged at Jorin with a plasma blade. They clashed in a whirl of sparks and snarls. Jorin fought with everything he had: earthborn grit, Vrakon training, and the desperate love of a brother protecting his sister. He disarmed Kalen with a brutal twist, then drove his knee into the traitor's gut. As Kalen crumpled, Lysara sealed him in a stasis field with a flick of her wrist. But the sleeper wasn't done. It coalesced into a towering figure, a mimic of Lysara herself, made of black metal and malice. "The sleeper learns," she breathed. "It's copying me." Jorin's mind raced. "Then we used that against it." He grabbed her hand. "Trust me." Together they ran, not away but toward the Heartstone chamber. The sleeper Lysara pursued, its steps echoing like thunder. When they reached the Heartstone, Jorin didn't hesitate. He placed both hands on the crystal and shouted, "It's me, Darian's son. I'm family." The Heartstone flared blinding white. The sleeper Lysara shrieked and stopped short, its form flickering. The real Lysara joined Jorin at the crystal, pressing her palms beside his. "And I am Vela's daughter, of blood and starlight." The crystal pulsed again, stronger this time. A wave of pure energy surged outward, striking the sleeper. For a moment it stood frozen, then collapsed into harmless dust. Silence, then applause. They turned to see Queen Vela standing in the doorway, flanked by loyal guards. Her face was weary but proud. "You've done more than save the palace," she said. "You've proven that unity is our true strength, not purity." In the days that followed, Kalen was exiled to the sunless wastes, his name stricken from the annals. The court, shamed and awed, bowed not just to Lysara, but to Jorin as well. Officially, he was named Blood Warden of the Sapphire Throne, a title never before given to a human. Yet peace remained fragile. One evening, as Jorin walked the eastern ramparts, a cloaked messenger slipped him a data slate. On it was a message encoded in Old Terran military cipher, a cipher only someone from his old unit would know. "Darian didn't die on Earth. He was taken. By them. They've been watching you. Come alone to the ruins of Outpost Theta." Midnight. His blood ran cold. He didn't tell Lysara, not yet. Not until he knew the truth. At midnight, beneath a sky streaked with meteor showers, Jorin stood at the edge of the Kelnor Desert, where Outpost Theta once stood. Only rusted beams and shattered domes remained. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, gaunt, wrapped in a tattered Terran uniform. His face was lined, his hair silver, but his eyes were Jorin's. "Dad!" Jorin choked. The man nodded, tears in his eyes. "They told me you were dead. All these years. Who took you?" "The Conclave of Echoes," Darian whispered. "A splinter faction of Terran scientists who believe hybrid bloodlines like yours are the key to surviving the galaxy's collapse. They've been manipulating events from the shadows, using the Reavers, funding Kalen, all to push you and Lysara together. Why? Because only a union of Terran and Vrakon blood can activate the Genesis Vault, a repository of ancient knowledge beneath the Heartstone. They believe it holds the cure for a coming cosmic plague." Jorin staggered back. "So everything, the war, the attack, even us?" "Not us," Darian said firmly. "That was real. Love always is." Before Jorin could respond, a pulse beam sliced through the night. Darian cried out and fell. From the dunes rose a squad of Echo soldiers, humans in black armor, their faces masked, their weapons humming. "Hand over the Blood Warden," their leader intoned. "He belongs to the future." Jorin activated his comm. "Lysara, Kelnor ruins. Now." He didn't wait. He charged. The fight was brutal. Jorin used every trick he'd learned, the human grit, the alien grace, but they were too many. Just as a blade found his ribs, a streak of white lightning tore through the ranks. Lysara descended like wrath incarnate, her armor blazing with royal sigils, her eyes burning with fury. "You hurt my brother?" she snarled. The Echo soldiers didn't stand a chance. When it was over, she cradled Jorin's bleeding form while Medrones sealed his wound. Darian lay still, his last breath a whisper. "Protect her. Protect each other." Back in the palace infirmary, Queen Vela listened to Jorin's tale in grim silence. When he finished, she placed a hand on his brow. The Conclave thinks they can control destiny. But destiny is not a weapon. It is a choice. She turned to Lysara. Daughter, the Genesis Vault must be opened, but not by them. By us. Together. Lysara looked at Jorin, her eyes full of sorrow and resolve. Then we go in together. Brother and sister. Human and Vrakon. Beneath the Heartstone they found the entrance. A circular door etched with both Terran runes and Vrakon glyphs. Only when Jorin placed his hand on the Terran side and Lysara on the alien side did it open. Inside was not a weapon, not a cure, but a nursery. Rows of stasis pods glowed softly, each containing an infant, half-human, half-Vrakon. Thousands of them, created decades ago, during the First Contact Wars, hidden away by peacekeepers who believed the future lay not in conquest, but in children. They were waiting for us? Lysara whispered, tears in her eyes. Jorin touched one pod. The child inside stirred, its tiny hand pressing against the glass. Green skin, dark hair, a future neither race could have imagined alone. In the weeks that followed, Jorin and Lysara didn't just defend the Empire, they redefined it. The nursery became a sanctuary, then a school, then a symbol. Humans and Vrakon began to intermarry openly. Trade routes opened. Old enemies became allies. And though danger still lurked in the void, the Conclave regrouped. The Reavers plotted. New threats stirred in the dark. Jorin and Lysara stood ready. Not as warriors alone, but as founders of something new. Years later, on the balcony where they'd first faced the stars as siblings, they watched their own children, 5 of them, play in the gardens below. The oldest, a boy named Tarek, had Jorin's eyes and Lysara's laugh. The youngest, a girl named Mira, had white hair streaked with copper and a knack for fixing plasma rifles before she could walk. Queen Vela, now retired, smiled from her garden chair. You've given them more than peace, she said. You've given them possibility. Jorin put an arm around Lysara. She leaned into him not as a princess, not as a warrior, but as family. And under the twin suns of Vrakes, where desert winds carried songs of old wars and new hopes, the story of the Blood Warden and the Starborn Princess became legend. Not for how it began in shock and shame, but for how it bloomed into something brave, beautiful, and utterly human. Time softened the edges of war like wind smoothing desert stone. The nursery beneath the Heartstone, once a secret vault of hope, became the cradle of unity. A living school where hybrid children learned both Terran mathematics and Vrakon star singing, where human poetry mingled with alien harmonics in the courtyards, and where the line between us and them faded into memory. Jorin, no longer just a soldier but a statesman of 2 worlds, worked tirelessly alongside Lysara to build bridges where walls once stood. Their bond, forged in revelation and tempered in fire, deepened into a rare kind of love. Not the kind that burns fast and fades, but the kind that roots itself in loyalty, respect, and shared purpose. They never married. Such a union would have been neither fitting nor necessary. But they built a life together anyway, not as lovers, but as siblings who had chosen each other twice. Once by blood, and once by will. In the east wing of the palace, they raised their children, not biologically Lysara's in the way the court once expected, but hers in every way that mattered. With Queen Vela's blessing and the silent approval of the Heartstone itself, Jorin married a human xenobiologist named Alira who had come to Zarvale as part of the new cultural exchange initiative. She was sharp-witted, kind-eyed, and unafraid of royal protocol. She adored Lysara like a sister in spirit, and Lysara returned the affection with fierce protectiveness. Their family grew quickly. 5 children, Tarek, Mira, Kovin, Sela, and little Darian, filled the palace halls with laughter, squabbles, and the occasional plasma glove mishap that scorched a priceless tapestry, much to the chagrin of the palace archivists. The children were wonders of hybridity. Tarek had his father's stubborn brow but Lysara's violet eyes. Myra's white hair shimmered with streaks of copper like desert rust. Little Darian, born on the anniversary of the Reaver assault, had green-tinged skin and a voice that could calm even the most agitated sky lizards in the royal menagerie. Lysara, now co-regent alongside her mother, never took a consort. Some whispered she was waiting for someone worthy. Others claimed she'd loved once and lost. But those who knew her best, Jorin, Alira, Queen Vela, understood. Her heart belonged to her people, her family, and the future they were building together. She taught the children swordplay at dawn, diplomacy by midday, and how to read the stars before bed. She told them stories of battles and blunders, of a human warrior who once didn't know he was royal, and a princess who learned humility through love. Peace did not come easily. There were still skirmishes on the outer rim, still factions that clung to old hatreds. But with every passing year, their unity held. The conclave of echoes, stripped of its influence and exposed for its manipulations, disbanded quietly. The Void Reavers, leaderless and scattered, became little more than raiders on the fringe, no longer a galactic threat. Trade flourished. Human engineers helped reinforce Vrakon bioarchitecture. Vrakon healers shared regenerative techniques that cured diseases long thought incurable on Earth. Even the deserts of Vrakes began to bloom, terraformed not by force, but by mutual design, with Terran drought-resistant crops woven into alien ecosystems. On the 10th anniversary of the Heartstone's awakening, a grand festival was held, the Day of Twin Suns. All species were welcome. Humans in simple tunics danced beside green-skinned nobles in armor that now bore Terran insignias. Music blended earth strings with Vrakon resonance chimes. At the center of it all stood Jorin and Lasara, hand in hand, raising a toast not to victory, but to kinship. Later that night, as fireflies made of captured starlight drifted through the gardens, Jorin sat with Alira on a bench carved from living crystal. Lasara joined them, her white hair loose, her armor replaced by a flowing robe the color of twilight. The children chased luminous moths nearby, their voices bubbling with joy. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Alira asked softly. Jorin watched Tarek lift little Darian onto his shoulders so he could reach a glowing blossom. "Sometimes, but home isn't a planet. It's the people who know your soul. Even the parts you didn't know existed." Lasara smiled. "And who tease you until your mother drops the biggest truth of your life?" They all laughed. The kind of deep, healing laughter that only comes after years of struggle turned into grace. Queen Vela, now aged but radiant, appeared beside them, leaning on a staff crowned with a shard of the Heartstone. "You've done well," she said simply. "Better than I ever dreamed." "No," Jorin said, shaking his head. "We did it together." And they had. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with courage, humor, and hearts wide open. Years later, when the children were grown, Tarek commanding a joint Earth-Vrakon peace fleet, Mira leading the Cradle as its first hybrid headmistress, Coven inventing fusion tech that powered half the quadrant, Sela writing epic chronicles of their family's saga, and little Darian becoming the youngest ever ambassador to the Galactic Concord, the palace still echoed with warmth. Jorin's hair had silvered, and Lasara's steps had slowed, but their spirits remained unbroken. On the day the Heartstone pulsed with a new, gentle rhythm, a signal that it had fully integrated the Terran resonance into its core, Jorin and Lasara stood once more on the skyward balcony, just as they had on that fateful day so long ago. "They'll remember us," Lasara said. "Not as heroes," Jorin replied, "but as the ones who chose love over fear." She squeezed his hand. "And had a lot of kids." He grinned. "And lived a very peaceful, very happy life." Below them, the city of Zarvale shimmered under twin suns, blooming with life, unity, and the quiet hum of a future built not on blood purity, but on the messy, magnificent beauty of belonging. And in that moment, beneath an endless alien sky, human and Vrakon, brother and sister, warrior and princess, they were finally, completely home.